Hi, welcome to the bathtub. It's the old masturbator. And Dodo, did you want to come out? Hold on a second. Lucky's not. Lucky's gone off somewhere, so you can come out now if you want. Come on. Come on out. Come. You're coming. Come on. Come on. There you go. Come on. You want to come out and say hi? Here. You want to get up here? You got my shoulder or you want to go up there? Okay. Okay, so as you can tell, these talks are like, these are precision film. We film these with absolute precision. Everything happens for a reason when we tape these. And the reason this is happening is because Lucky left the room, so Dodo can come out. And then when Lucky comes in, she won't come in if Dodo's here. They don't get along. Okay, well, this is good. This is a mistake. We're going to talk about something. I got a new theme show idea. It's called cleaning our bookshelves. Cleaning out our bookshelves. Do you want to go back up there? Come on. Oh my gosh, cleaning our bookshelves. And the story of this is that I'm always constantly all my life I'm constantly buying books and getting rid of them, and buying new books and then selling the same books, and then sometimes I have to go buy those books again, and then I'm always looking to try to get rid of some books because I don't have any room for them all. You want to go over here? Oh my God, this is just. I'm leaving this in just for what's it? Youngestine. There you go. I think Youngestine likes to see the bird jump on my head all the time. We don't expect much from the bathtub, do we? So I'm always trying to get rid of books. That's a long story. And I have books I've been carrying around with me all my life, from one country to another, back and forth from one country to another sometimes. And I've had them forever. Sometimes I get rid of them and I buy them again. And I never know which ones to get rid of. So I'm constantly trying to get rid of books. And one of the books I'm often trying to get rid of is this book called The Paradise Motel by Eric McCormack. I'm not trying to get rid of it because it's a bad book. I'd never read it until this week. And I don't know much about Eric McCormack except what it says here. He came from Scotland and moved to Canada, so he's officially a Canadian writer, which is a very good thing to do, by the way, because the Canadians treat their writers pretty good. So that helps. And they give you lots of grants and so forth. Anyway, I've always had this because it came out in 1989 when I was living in England. I want to say it was published by my publisher when I was there, but I can't say that it was. Dodo, I think this is, I don't want to film this again because I'm just too lazy. So you're going to have to go back in the cage if this is going to keep happening. Okay. Sorry. You're going to go back in the cage. You want to go up here? You can do that. Come on, you want to go in the cage? Well, then you stop it. Oh, God. If I brought my cattle prod, we wouldn't be having this problem. Just go bzzz, and she shuts up for a while, don't you? I don't have a cattle prod. What a long waste of time to tell you that this is a book called The Paradise Motel. I've carried it around since I bought it probably in 1989. I met a lot of people. I remember getting some good reviews in London. And I don't really pay attention to reviews, but I remember meeting readers, like common readers. Oh, Dodo, who liked it. And common readers are like us, the bathtub people. I never really listened to critics too often, but I remember meeting people who were worked in bookstores or who just really liked books, and they kept telling me how good this was, and it was kept being referred to as magic realism, which gave me a bit of a suspicion. I was a little suspicious of that. Because the term magic realism means almost anything. But I kept hearing from people who somehow just seemed interesting people. They kept saying it's really a really unusual, interesting novel. So I kept it. I've been carrying it around. That cover gives you I don't even know what the cover is about. It's kind of a Magritte sort of picture of a guy with a hat on I don't know, a pole. I don't know what he's doing. He's staring out a window. And I didn't know what the book was about. I did notice the book got some good reviews, and he published some more books over the years, not very often, like every 5, 6, 8 years, and they weren't getting as good a reviews. He wrote a book of stories before this, which were called Inspecting the Vaults. I used to have that, but it's one of the books I kind of got rid of. And I just never read it. And I every time I'm going through the books, I think, well, I'm never going to read that book. and I might as well get rid of it. And this week, I was putting this in the stack of stuff that I was going to try to get rid of. And usually I have the stack of stuff I want to get rid of, and then I go through it thinking, well, maybe I don't want to get rid of that one. And I went back to this, and I said, well, it's so short. It's actually a fairly short novel. Kind of big print. It's only 200 pages. There's lots of short chapters in it. And I thought, well, at least I'll give it a try before I get rid of it. And I find out what I've been carrying around for 35 years, this damn book. Anyway, I started reading it, and I sort of was hooked almost from the fifth or sixth page. It's an incredibly unusual, disturbing, beautiful book, which I can't. It's, and I have two approaches to it, which some of you who have read it or who will read it might even help me understand better. I think it's either completely original, or it's quite, what would you call it? It's read a lot of horror fiction, and it's using and adapting lots of ideas it's picked up from other horror writers. I'm not sure either way, but I do know it's a very, very strange and incomparable book. It starts off. First of all, I have to warn you. It has some of the most disturbing horror-like images. It reminds me a little of Brian Evanson, our bathing buddy Brian Evanson, who has kind of very dark, twisted stories. And the violence and the physical disfigurements that occur on some of the human beings in this book are really disturbing. And I've never read them before, except maybe one passage. It starts off with a murder and a kid who remembers I can't remember, his uncle or his father or his grandfather telling him a story. His grandfather telling him a story when he was very young that he had grown up hearing about a man who murdered his wife. And I'm going to tell you the actual, because it's the first 20 or 30 pages. He murdered his wife, chopped her up, and sewed her body parts into human beings, all these different people in his family. Now you know what you're getting into when you read this book. It's written in very kind of clear, lucid, not a histrionic, not horror fiction type prose. Very clear, lucid prose. And that's what wraps you up a bit. And in the course of the crime, this story becomes lodged in the kid's mind, this horrible, horrible event. I won't describe the whole thing. The kid grows up wondering if it was a story that his grandfather made up, or if it really happened and if this family actually existed. I forget what their names were. The McCormack. No, they weren't called McCormack's. They were called something else. Zachary something. Anyway, in the course of it, he goes investigating all over the world. And my favorite passage is the section. There's basically it's a novel in stories. So it's like almost like a mini Decameron. This character goes around the world trying to find out about this family, and encounters all these other stories. My favorite one is the one is the section that's probably the least grotesque, and that's when he goes to a place. I think he's in Australia, called the Institute for the Lost, and it's about people. It's a place that's in a hospital for people who either have forgotten who they are, or who remember themselves to be somebody they aren't. Those are two of the possible types of people that are in this hospital. And there's a couple of stories that are told about them that are pretty haunting and unusual. There's another, then it comes on, after that there's a journalist who comes and talks about two really odd murders. Each of these stories are about 10 to 15 pages, and then we follow the narrator going around the world and his relationships with his wife, which is kind of the frame of the story. Is not the horror story, but him and his wife. And I don't want to say how that goes either. But anyways, it's a sort of dream landscape. So I can see the calling it what do they call it? Magic realism. But it all feels so physically and real clearly described. There's two or three horrific. There's only one section that I sort of saw familiar, and it's probably one of the most disturbing parts of the book, which is about a guy who works in a circus, who can have someone stick swords through them, all the way through them to stay alive. And he's got an assistant who knows exactly where to put the sword or the spike. And he tries to become the best at his profession. He tries to get the most spikes going straight, piercing his entire body in just the places that won't kill him or make him. it reminds me a little bit, and what it reminded me of is the Robert Aickman story, The Swords, which is a beautiful, one of Aickman's best stories. So at that point, I thought, well, there is some connection with the horror landscape and of which canonical horror writers and contemporary horror writers. But otherwise, it feels like a very unusual book and very much in its own sphere. Anyway, I liked it. By the time the book came to an end, I did like it. I do not like kind of horrific, especially physically horrific imagery, but it still drew me in. I have to say there were a couple of passages I sort of skipped. I mean, I skimmed because I could see it was a little disgusting. But it's still kind of, I would say, an almost beautiful book. I don't know what else to describe it. And I would say with people who do like Aickman, maybe definitely if you like Brian Evanson's stuff, you might well find this interesting. If you like Ligotti's stuff, I can see it's very different from those writers, but it has the same visceral impact in certain passages. Okay, the Paradise Motel, Eric McCormack. I think I'm going to have to move this on or pass. I'm going to give it to somebody. I really do like it, but I don't have anywhere room for all the books I like. Happy Bathing, and I read the whole book in a couple of bathtubs. It was a good, quick read, and very memorable.